So guys, this is the volume 2 of the episode 4 of the India and its neighboring country disputes. So in this volume 2 of episode 3, we are going to discuss about the face-off of Pangong and the Galwan Valley. Guys, as it is the continuation of the volume 1, so that I would like to suggest you to watch first the volume 1 of this episode and then watch this. And if you want, you can also watch the episode 1 and the episode 2 of this series to understand it in a more clear way. Pangong Tso Lake. Pangong Tso Lake is in the eastern Ladakh, has often been in the news, most famously during the Doklam standoff when a video of the scuffle between Indian and Chinese soldiers. In Ladakhi language, Pangong means extensively concavity and Tso means a lake in the Tibetan language. It is a 135-kilometer long lake located in the Himalayas at a height of approximately 4,350 meters, stretches out from India to China. It is formed from Tethys geosyncline. It is a saltwater lake. The line of actual control LAC mostly passes through the land, but Pangong Tso Lake is a unique case where it passes through the water as well. 1/3 of the water body, which is 45 kilometers stretch, is in the Indian control, while the rest of 90 kilometers is under the Chinese control. By itself, lake does not have any major tactical significance, but it lies in the path of Chushul approach, one of the main approaches that China can use for offensive into Indian held territory. The brackish water lake freezes out in the winter and becomes ideal for the ice skating and polo. The legendary 19th century Dogra General Joravar Singh is said to have trained his soldiers and horses on the frozen Pangong Lake before invading Tibet. Helicopters of the Chinese army came close to the border during the face-off with the Indian army near Pangong Tso Lake in the eastern Ladakh during the standoff. Aircraft restricted near LAC. As per existing agreements between India and China, operation of fighter aircraft and armored helicopters is restricted to a distance from the LAC. Military trainer, armored helicopter and other armored aircraft shall not fly within 10 km of the LAC. Tactical significance of the Pangong Lake. By itself, the lake does not have major tactical significance, as I said, but it lies in the path of the Chushul approach, one of the main approaches that China can use for the offensive approach to the Indian territory. Indian assessments show that a major Chinese offensive, if it comes into the Indian territory, the Indian army will flow across the both northern and the southern part of the lakes. During the 1962 war, this was where China launched its main offensive. Indian army fought heroically at Rizangla, the mountain pass on the southeastern approach of the Chushul Valley. Not far away to the north of the lake is the army Dhan Singh Thapa post, named after Major Dhan Singh Thapa, who was awarded country's highest gallantry award, the Paramveer Chakra. Major Thapa and his platoon were manning Sirijap 1 outpost, which was essential for the defense of Chushul airfield. Does the region have enough connectivity? Over the years, the Chinese have built motorable roads along their banks of the Pangong Tso Lake. People's Liberation Army Huang Yangtang base at Minning-Zhen, southwest of the Yunchuan, the capital of China's Ningxia Hui Autonomous Region, stands a massive to scale model of its disputed area in Aksai Chin. It points to the importance accorded by the Chinese to the area. Even during the peacetime, the difference in the perception over where the LAC lies on the northern bank of the lake makes it contested terrain. In 1999, when the army unit from the area was moved to Kargil from the Operation Vijay, China took opportunity to build 5 km of a road inside the Indian territory along the lake's bank. From one of these roads, China's positions physically overlook Indian's position on the northern strip of the Pangong Tso Lake. What are the fingers in the lake? The barren mountains on the lake's northern bank called Chang Chenmo just forward in the major spurs, which our army calls as fingers. India claims that the LAC is coterminous with the finger 8. But India physically controls only area up to finger 4. Chinese border posts are at finger 8, while it believes that LAC passes through finger 2. Around 6 years ago, the Chinese had attempted a permanent construction at finger 4, which was demolished after Indians strongly objected to it. Chinese use light vehicles on the road to patrol up to finger 2, which has a turning point for their vehicles. If they are confronted and stopped by Indian patrol in between asking them to return, it leads to confusion as the vehicles can't turn back. The Chinese have now stopped the Indian soldiers moving beyond finger 2. This is an eyeball to eyeball situation which is still developing. What is the conflict on the water? On the water, Chinese had a major advantage until a few years ago. Their superior boats could literally run circles around the Indian boats, but India purchased better Tampa boats some 8 years ago, leading to quicker and more aggressive response. Although there were well-established drills for disengagement of patrol boats on the both sides, the confrontation on the water have led to tense situations in past few years. The Chinese have moved in more boats called LX series in the lake after the tensions which rose in the area from the last month. The drill for the boats is agreed upon by two sides as per the standard operating procedure. What is the drill? After a boat from other side is spotted moving into their own waters, an equal number of boats are dispatched to confront the intruders. The boats stop about 20 feet apart and both sides unfold the banners. Both banners are on red cloth with white lettering urging the other side to return into their interest of peace and tranquility. The patrol leaders on the respective boats then shout out the same messages using loud hailers. The standoff continues for about 10 minutes. Each side asks for their banners to be lifted. Both the sides then unfold another set of banners which reads, "In the interest of peace and tranquility, we are returning to our side and we trust you will do the same." The boats then move away and return to their respective sides. What happens if a Chinese boat suddenly makes a move? Chinese boats may try to make a move and get into the Indian waters. Then an Indian boat tails it first, giving it a chase and then circling it with high speeds. This tactical maneuver called a whirlpool trap traps the aggressor boat in the high currents, forcing it to return as it begins to dip into an eddy. Galwan Valley. What is behind the latest tensions of the Galwan Valley? The standoff in the Galwan Valley, according to the reports, have been triggered by China moving in the troops and equipment to stop the construction activity by India. The Galwan Valley area has now become the hot spot because it is where the LAC is very closest to the new road India has built along the most remote and vulnerable area along the LAC in the Ladakh. The road, which is several hundred kilometers long, was built in 2019 and connects to a high altitude forward air base that India has deactivated at Daulat Beg Oldi, reputed to be the world's highest landing ground. The Galwan River Valley, with harsh climatic conditions and high altitude terrain, lies along the western sector of the LAC and close to Oxychin, a disputed area claimed by India but controlled by the China. What exactly happened in the Galwan Valley? Tensions had been high in the area for a few weeks. Large number of soldiers and military equipment were deployed along the LAC from the both sides. Even though the LAC in the Galwan Valley was never disputed by the two sides, the China had moved into the Indian side of LAC. Meeting was held at level of corps commanders on the June 6, 2020. After this, negotiations had been conducted between local military commanders of the both armies. They negotiated for a mutually agreed disengagement process. As a part of that process, a buffer zone had been agreed to be created between the LAC and the junction of Shok and Galwan rivers. The two armies were to move back by a kilometer each in the area as a first step. Colonel B. Santosh Babu, who was monitoring this process, noticed that a Chinese camp was still existing in that area. He went to get it removed. This soon led to scuffle and blows being exchanged, resulting in deaths and injuries. More than 70 Indian soldiers were injured in a major scuffle. At least 20 soldiers, including a commanding officer, lost their lives on a single day. How serious is the current standoff? This is the first time after 1962 war that soldiers have died in the clashes on India-China border in Ladakh. Even otherwise, the last deaths on the LAC came from attack on an Assam Rifles patrol in Arunachal Pradesh by Chinese in 1975. But the last real military engagement between the two armies was at Nathula in Sikkim in 1967. In this, 88 soldiers lost their lives and more than 300 Chinese soldiers were killed. But all these incidents were prior to the two countries signing various agreements starting from 1993. The agreements were aimed at maintaining peace and tranquility on the border. What does the nature of standoff reveal? Such a large number of soldiers were killed without firing a round. This means that these deaths were far more brutal than they would have been had guns and rifles been used. In most of these scuffles, China have used bats, clubs, sticks and stones cause major injuries. Besides the use of blunt objects, some soldiers said that they have been pushing them into the fast-flowing Galwan River. Most of the deaths were due to the injuries aggravated by the intense cold in the high high altitude area. However, that it remained restricted to a physical tussle points to fact that there was no escalation to kinetic level like rifles, artillery shells, rockets, missiles and etc. China and India are both nuclear powers, and any escalation from the current situation is highly risky, and thus it is less likely to happen. Why were weapons not used? The soldiers were not carrying weapons. As per the drill followed by the both sides in the border areas to avoid inadvertent escalation by opening fire, this is in tune with the 1996 agreement between the two countries on the confidence building measures in the military field along the LAC. This imposed many restrictions on the military equipment exercises like blasts and etc. near the LAC. What happened to the Chinese side? Official statements put by the army and MEA have no details of any deaths or injuries to the Chinese soldiers. However, the first statement by the army was amended to say that there was casualties on the both sides. The Chinese government or People's Liberation Army PLA there has not provided any details of soldiers killed or injured in the clash. The only number that has come from the news agency of ANI. It has quoted unnamed sources claiming that as per radio transmission intercepts, 43 Chinese soldiers were either killed or injured in the clash. Another report in the usnews.com, which was cited by the American intelligence, to say that 35 Chinese, including an officer, are believed to have been died. Has the situation been diffused? A meeting at the level of major generals of both armies took place at PP-14 in the Galwan Valley. It brought the situation under control and Indian side was able to collect all the dead bodies. The Chinese were given permission to bring in helicopters to ferry their injured back. But tensions have been already running high at various places on the Ladakh border since May 2020. The latest incidents had added to the tensions, but there have been no reports of any other clash at the border. China has brought back the tent-like structure that Indian troops had destroyed on June 15 at Patrol Point 14, which is PP-14 in Galwan Valley, escalating the tensions that were expected to cool down after some days. Both sides had vacated the site after the deadly clash in which 20 Indian soldiers led by Colonel Santosh Babu were killed. The Chinese tent was removed during the skirmish, following which the two sides agreed on the talks through senior military and diplomatic channels. The construction of a new tent, even as talks make slow progress, is bound to have debilitating impact on efforts to disengage the troops. Sources confirmed that satellite images show significant construction activity by the Chinese side at Patrol Point 14, including new defenses and hardened shelter for the troops. These include additional troops that were removed along the LAC following the clash at Galwan Valley. India has countered this by deployments on its side. Chinese troop deployments along the line of actual control have been apparently crossed 10,000. Offensive Chinese deployments are seen at many locations, some of them reinforced with tank and artillery shells. Since the clash, China has accelerated roadworks and seems to be creating infrastructure to house troops at Patrol Point 14 in the Galwan Valley area, an area that earlier was only patrolled. Is an early resolution likely? There were hopes of an early disengagement and de-escalation after conciliatory statements following the meetings, but after the incident at Galwan Valley, the process is likely to slow down. Naturally, an early resolution now looks unlikely. China has reasserted its claim over Galwan Valley. Chinese army has made up sharp statements alleging that Indian soldiers twice crossed the LAC. The MEA too categorically stated that Chinese had violated the LAC in Galwan Valley region. These allegations and counter-allegations, along with the heightened public sentiment on the deaths of so many soldiers, will test any process towards the resolution. How does the future look? The two countries are still talking at military and diplomatic levels, so any escalation into a major conflict looks some distance away at this moment. But conflict situations have a dynamic of their own and events can overtake the best laid plans. If a military conflict occurs, the whole conflict can be localized in one area and can be along the whole border or can be in any one sector. But unless there is another provocation and crisis, the two sides should be able to resolve this situation peacefully. Meanwhile, the government will place the armed forces on full alert. Simultaneously, it will continue to use diplomatic channels to resolve the crisis. Along the other side, controlling the domestic messaging will be done to avoid inflaming public emotions. in all the execution of such strategies will determine the course of the future action on the China.